Today we are starting chapter 9, and this section is over circles and circumference. There are some important vocab words that you want to know, so if you guys would please take out your red pens and go ahead and fill this in. All right, the first word that we're going to talk about today is radius. Everyone say radius. All right, so you can see I have a nice little picture down here. The radius, as you can see, is simply from this point right here in the middle to touching the edge of the circle. So the radius, as you can see, says the distance from the center to any point on the circle. If you wanted to use a formula, you could use this one right here. R equals D divided by 2, or the radius is the diameter divided by 2. Let's talk about the next word. Everyone say diameter. The diameter is the distance across a circle through the center. Look at this right here. It's all the way across the circle, okay? Looking up here at these words, which word is longer, the radius or the diameter? The diameter, the word is longer, and it is also longer on the circle, okay? The diameter formula you can use is diameter equals 2 times the radius. Now I want you to understand why that makes sense. If this was just the radius, let's imagine that it kept going. That would be doubling the radius, wouldn't it? But if I doubled the radius, what does that now look like? It looks like a diameter, okay? So that is why D equals 2 times R, because the diameter is 2 times the radius. The next word I have for you today, say this with me, circumference. Circumference. All right, so the circumference is the distance around the circle. If I were to have some kind of a bendy ruler or yardstick, it could measure the outside of a circle. So that is called the circumference. There are 2 formulas that you have written down here. One is if I give you the diameter, you would say C equals pi times D. Or if I gave you the radius, C equals 2 times pi times R. Now, you might be wondering, what in the world is this pi that I'm talking about? I want you to look at this right here. Everyone say pi. Pi is a very famous, what we would call irrational number. Now, irrational number is a number that goes on and on and on and on forever, okay? So, we shorten that number that goes on and on and on forever to 3.14. Everyone say 3.14. 3.14. However, the real actual number, I want you guys to put this into your calculator, 22 sevenths, or 22 divided by 7. When you do that, guys, what is 22 divided by 7?
3.28571.
It is an irrational number because it goes on and on and on forever. So that's why we typically will just shorten it. And when I say let's use pi, we just use 3.14. Unless I specify and say, I want you to use 22 over 7 for this one. Okay? Now let's go to this last part down here. Everyone say semicircle.
Semicircle.
I have given you a picture of a semicircle right there. It doesn't look like a full circle. It looks like a half a circle. So here's what's interesting. It is, as it says, 1/2 of a circle. And in order to use this formula, it would normally be just C equals pi times the diameter. But notice what I did on this formula here, guys. What did I do? I divided it by 2. Why do you think I divided it by 2? It's a half of a circle. So I'm cutting it in half, or I am dividing it by 2. So that's how we get the formula for finding the semicircle. Let's do a few of these problems together. This first one says to find the radius. Remind me again, guys, which one is the smaller one, the radius or the diameter? The radius is the smaller one. Looking at this right here, what did I give you?
20 feet.
20 feet. Is that the radius or the diameter? That's the diameter. So I want you to, right now, if it asks us to find the radius, I want to use the little formula that we wrote in our notes up at the top. Go to where it says radius. What formula does it give you at the edge of your notes there? Everyone write that down. R equals D divided by 2. That means the radius equals the diameter divided by 2. As you just told me, we got the diameter from our original problem. Luke, what is the diameter? 20. Okay, now we're going to divide 20 divided by 2. Abigail, what is the radius? 10. Now, whenever we have this, we want to attach the units, so this is going to be 10 feet. Okay, let's do another example. This one doesn't have a picture with it, but it does tell us that the diameter is 16 centimeters. We are trying to find the radius. Remind me again, what is the formula for finding the radius? Okay, we're going to take the diameter and divide it by 2. R equals, instead of D for the D, what will I plug in for the D?
16.
16 divided by 2. Michaela, what is the answer?
8.
8 what?
Centimeters.
8 centimeters. Now, how many of you would say, Miss Forpaul, I can tell by looking at this right here, the diameter is the long one, 20, and if I cut it in half, it would be 10. How many of you can see that? If you can see that, there is absolutely no need to use the formula. If you are able to identify it, then for your homework tonight, you would not need to show me any of that work. So let's just do a couple that are not in our notes. Let's imagine that we had a circle and the diameter was 60. What would the radius be?
30.
How'd you get that? You divided by 2. You cut it in half. Let's say we have a monster circle and it was 100 for the diameter. What would the radius be?
50.
50. Very good. Okay. So once again, if you can do that in your head, mental math, there is no need to show work. All right. Let's go on to the next one. Now it's asking us to find just the opposite. It asks us to find the diameter. Let's look at our notes up at the top. The diameter is the distance across a circle through the center. So it's all the way across the circle. What is the formula that you see there for finding diameter? D equals 2R. What does it mean when a number is next to a letter? Multiply. So diameter equals 2 times the radius. What is the radius?
14.
7. So that's okay. So she told us that the answer is 14 what, Reagan?
14 meters.
14 meters. So let's just think about this. If you see in our circle, this was saying, hey guys, half of that right there, half of the circle is 7. But I didn't want to find only half. The diameter says I want it all the way across. Doesn't it make sense that if that part was 7, this part is also 7? And all you have to do is multiply 7 times 2 or add 7 plus 7. All right, so let's go to the next one. We're going to use the same formula once again. We're trying to find the diameter, and we know that the diameter equals 2 radiuses. A lot of times people get scared when they see a fraction. But class, do we know what 5.5 would be as a decimal?
Yes.
What would it be? 5.5. Okay, so the diameter equals 2 times 5.5. All we're doing is doubling what the radius would be. Guys, what is 5.5 doubled? 11. Give me the units.
11 yards.
11 yards is correct. All right, now, before we turn the page, on the next page we're going to talk a lot about circumference, okay? But I want you to look at the top of our notes. I gave you 2 formulas that have to do with circumference. What was the first formula you wrote down in red about circumference?
Distance around a circle.
C equals pi times d. What was the other one you wrote in red?
C equals pi. 2 pi.
C equals 2 times pi times r. Now, just as a reminder to help you, whenever you're writing pi, it's like a squiggle line, and then it's got 2 little lines down. Okay, so that's just a Greek symbol. It is not just 2 t's connected to each other. You want to give it this little squiggle at the top. Okay? So, these are the 2 formulas we're going to use for these problems. Find the circumference. If you remember, circumference is the distance around the circle. So, let's start off first with what does it give me? It says 5 inches. Is that 5 inches the radius or is that the diameter?
Radius.
It's the radius. How can we tell that that's the radius? It's the smaller one. It's not all the way across. So which one of these formulas mentions the radius? C equals...
2 times pi times r.
Very good. So let's write that down. C equals 2 times pi times r. Now all this is we are just plugging in some numbers. So we're looking for the circumference, and we know it's 2 times pi. Do you guys remember what we shortened pi to be?
Oh, 3.14.
3.14 or 3.14. So we're going to multiply that times 3.14. And I still have to multiply it by the radius. Now, Sierra, what was the radius? 5. Now, in order to find the circumference, remember, once again, we're finding the distance around this circle. All you have to do is multiply them all together. When you do that, Reagan, what'd you get?
31.4.
31.4, and then give me units.
Inches.
31.4 inches is correct. All right, so let's look at the next one, problem B. Problem B, I give you interesting and slightly different instructions. What are the instructions on problem B?
Use 22 over 7 for pi.
Okay, so if you remember, pi could be two things. It could be 3.14, or I said it could be 22 over 7. Remember when we put that into our calculators, we got that really big number where it said 3.1428571, all right? So this one is actually a more accurate measure because it's the regular normal number. So in this case, it told us to go ahead and use 22 over 7. So the first thing we have to do, anytime it asks us to find circumference, I've got to remember there are two formulas for this. According to this, I told you this distance was 28 millimeters. Was that distance I gave to you the diameter or the radius of that watch? It was the diameter. I gave you the length all the way across that watch. So what formula should I use for this?
C equals pi times d.
C equals pi times d. Now, if you remember, going back up here, for pi, it told me to use 22 over 7. So instead of pi right here, I am going to put 22 over 7. Now I still have to multiply that by the diameter. Remind me again, guys, what was my diameter?
28.
28. And I could say 28 over 1 if I wanted. Is there anything here that can be cross-reduced?
Yes, the 7 and the 28.
The 7 and 28. What could they become? A 4 and a 1.
And a 4.
Very good. So now we're going to multiply across those numerators. What is 22 times 4?
88.
88. So their circumference is 88 millimeters. Any questions on how to find the distance around the outside of the circle or how to find the circumference? Okay. Let's go on to the next one. I want you to take out your red pen and fill in this part for me. Okay, so for this one, we're just taking it a step further. This tells us to find the perimeter of the semicircle region. Remind me again, what is the perimeter of something? The outside of it, okay? So the perimeter right here says it's the distance around the outside of an object. So I am wanting you to tell me what the distance is all the way there. I gave you one piece of information there. Did I give you the diameter or did I give you the radius? I gave you the diameter because, look, it's all the way across the circle, right? The only thing I know is the diameter, which means this portion right here is a big mystery to us. Do you guys remember what the outside of a circle, finding the outside of a circle is called?
Yeah.
Starts with a C. Circumference, okay? So we are going to use our circumference formula to find the top half of what the distance of that circle would be right there. So in order to find the circumference, there are two formulas that I've taught to you today. The first one was C equals pi times D. The second one was C equals 2 times pi times R. So what you have to do is look at that circle. Did I give you the diameter or did I give you the radius? I gave you the diameter. So which one of those circumference formulas will we use? C equals pi times D because I already know the diameter. Now here's the problem. This formula is for a whole circle. Do we have a whole circle here?
No.
We have a semicircle. So what do you think I need to do with that formula? If I only have a half a circle, I need to divide this by 2. Now you're going to want to write kind of small for this problem. Actually, I might write a little smaller. So now let's start plugging some things in. It doesn't tell me that I need to use 22 over 7. So what am I going to use for pi? 3.14. Times the diameter. What's the diameter? 6. Divided by
2.
Is there anything that you can see right there that I could reduce?
The 6 and 2.
The 6 and the 2. What do you think the 6 and 2 would become?
The 2 becomes a 1, and the 6 becomes a 3.
That's a 1 and a 3. All right, so now let's just multiply across that numerator right there. Michaela, what do you get?
9.42.
Okay, 9.42. So this is the circumference of the rounded part of our circle. Basically, this portion up there is what we just discovered, 9.42 meters. But I've asked you to find the what?
Perimeter.
The perimeter. Remember, the perimeter is the distance around the entire semicircle. So in order to find that perimeter, the instructions up there told us that P equals the circumference plus the diameter. Does that make sense? So we just figured out the circumference, which is 9.42, and now we have to add the diameter. Remember, the diameter is this bottom part of the semicircle. So I need to add 6. When you do that, guys, what do you find the perimeter of that semicircle would be?
15.42.
15.42
Meters.
just meters. All right, and once again, that gives us this idea, not just of that portion on the top, not just the portion on the bottom, but the entire semicircle. All right, we're going to do one more problem just like this together. First things first. Did I give you, right there, the radius or the diameter?
The diameter.
We only got the radius. How can you tell that's the radius?
So it's only like half.
It's only half the distance of that circle. So which one of the formulas for circumference will I use if I have given you the radius?
Pi equals 2 times. Oh my gosh.
C equals
2 times pi times r.
2 times pi times r. Now, is this a whole circle?
No.
It's a half of a circle. So what do you think I should do with my formula? Divide by 2. All right, just looking at that right there, is there anything we can cross out? 2 divided by 2, guys, what is 2 divided by 2? 1. So we would just have 1 over 1. So basically you can eliminate that. Okay, which I am all about eliminating and having less things to plug in. So now all I need to plug in is pi times the radius. Remind me again, guys, what is pi? 3.14. Maddie, what is my radius? 15. Luke, when you multiply those together, what do you get? All right, so we've got 47.1 inches. Is that my final answer? No. If you remember, what this symbolizes is the outside of that circle. That outside is 47.1. What do I still have to add?
You still have to add
15.
the circumference and the diameter.
Okay, so here's what I have a lot of you telling me, to add 15. But if I added that 15, guess what? Is that the whole part?
No.
No, I'm still missing a part. So what is the whole bottom part total?
30 because
30. How'd you get that?
it's only half of it, so then you just multiply it.
Good job. This one right here would be another 15. Okay, so she just kind of did the mental math. She knew 15 plus 15 equals 30. All right, so if we are taking the perimeter, we need to do the circumference plus the diameter. So the circumference is 47.1 plus the diameter, which she just said was 30. I want you guys to figure out what that perimeter would be. All right, what do we get, guys?
77.1 inches.
77.1 inches is correct. All right, for the finale, we've got think, pair, share here. Find the perimeter of the semicircle. First things first, we got to figure out what formula we're going to use. Do I give you the diameter or the radius of the circle? The diameter. Remember, that's the distance all the way across. So what formula am I going to use for the diameter with the circumference of a circle?
C times pi.
C equals pi times d. Guys, is this a whole circle?
No,
It's a half a circle, so what do I do with my formula? Divide it by 2. Okay? Halen, what do we stand for pi? 3.14. To Kobe, what is the diameter?
The diameter is 2.
Okay, so I'm going to multiply it by 2, and then I have to divide by 2. Jocelyn, do you see anything I can cancel out?
The shows.
The 2's. So guys, what's the answer? 3.14. That's why the beauty of canceling things out is so wonderful. Now, is that it? Is that my final answer? No, I'm just going to circle it because it's only part of the answer, okay? Instead, I need to take the circumference plus the diameter. What did we say the circumference was?
3.14.
3.14. What did we say the diameter was?
2.
2. Which means the perimeter of my circle is 5.14 what? Feet. Okay, so with this one, you want to make sure you always attach the units there for that. Any questions about today's lesson? Okay, so tonight there is a homework assignment. It is on big ideas, and it is 9 questions.